Did Herbert Hoover, the 31st President of the United States, truly deserve the harsh public criticism that defined his presidency? Herbert Hoover, once a celebrated public servant, climbed the ladder of success and became the nation's leader. Yet, his presidency was marred by a cloud of public disapproval and criticism. The question is, was this criticism justified, or was it a product of the challenging circumstances of his time? Now let's delve deeper into the beginning of Hoover's tenure to understand the roots of this public sentiment. Hoover's presidency began on a high note, with the Roaring Twenties in full swing, but could anyone have predicted the disaster that was to come? The Roaring Twenties were a time of prosperity, with the economy booming and consumerism at an all-time high. Jazz was the soundtrack of the era, and flappers danced their way into the hearts of the nation. Herbert Hoover stepped into this vibrant scene, promising to continue the economic growth. However, the Wall Street crash of 1929 brought this roaring era to a screeching halt. The Great Depression, the worst economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world, had begun. Suddenly the cheers turned into cries of despair as millions of Americans were left jobless and starving. Hoover, once hailed as a beacon of hope, found himself in the eye of the storm. His response to the crisis proved to be his downfall. He believed in the power of the individual and the evils of government intervention. His reluctance to provide direct aid to the suffering masses was seen as a lack of empathy, further damaging his public image. As the Depression deepened, Hoover's popularity plummeted. His name became synonymous with the shanty towns or Hoovervilles that sprung up across the country, stark reminders of the nation's economic despair. The Great Depression marked a turning point in Hoover's presidency, casting a long shadow over his remaining years in office. Despite his efforts, Hoover's tenure is often remembered more for its failures than its successes. But why? Well, some of the harshest criticisms came from his perceived inaction during the Great Depression. Despite his belief in limited government intervention, the American public yearned for a more proactive approach. Hoover's policies, though well-intentioned, were viewed as too little, too late. Additionally, his inability to connect with the American public further tarnished his image. Hoover, a man of humble beginnings, was ironically seen as distant and aloof by many. His reserved demeanor and technocratic approach to governance were at odds with the public's demand for empathy and action. These criticisms, fair or not, have shaped Hoover's historical legacy. He's often portrayed as a passive leader in a time of crisis, a portrayal that overshadows his significant contributions in other areas. So, was the criticism of Herbert Hoover justified, or was he simply a victim of circumstance and unfortunate timing? You decide.